Hey, you ever feel a little twinge of something, maybe uh, guilt, right as you're about to click buy online?
Or even after you've already bought it.
Exactly. It's surprisingly common. Apparently, something like 68% of people actually back out of their online shopping because of those feelings or, ethical questions.
Yeah, it's a big number.
So today we're taking a deep dive into this whole idea, guilt-free purchasing. And just so you know, this deep dive from e-commerce psychology is powered by Growth Suite.
Ah, growth suite. Good stuff.
Yeah, Growth Suite helps you run smart discount campaigns on your store. You can test it for free on your Shopify store. Just head over to the Shopify App Store now and give it a try. Free.
Right. So we're going to unpack those emotional roadblocks, the things that can really stop an online sale cold.
And our guide for this is the guilt-free purchasing. Removing Emotional Barriers to Conversion article, also from e-commerce psychology.
That's the one. We'll explore how this feeling of guilt really shapes your decisions when you're shopping online.
And also what businesses are doing, or maybe can do, to create more of a guilt-free vibe.
Exactly, those innovative strategies.
So whether you're trying to understand your own spending habits better or you're just curious about how e-commerce is like adapting to our feelings,
Uh-huh.
this deep dive should have some pretty interesting insights for you. Okay, let's jump in. What exactly is this consumer guilt we're talking about?
Well, at its core, it's that sense of unease, that internal conflict you feel when you're thinking about buying something or maybe right after.
Okay.
And the article points out it can come from different places, maybe questioning the ethics behind it or worrying about the budget.
Or just feeling it doesn't line up with your values.
Precisely. And it's not just a quick feeling that goes away. It has real impacts. Businesses see it in those abandoned carts.
Yeah, definitely seen those stats.
And shoppers, well, you can start feeling negatively about certain brands because of it.
It's like that little voice in your head, right?
Right.
Whispering, do you really need this? Or is this actually okay?
Exactly that voice. And it seems like it's a pretty big trend now. The article mentions Trend Watching spotted this move towards guilt-free consumption, GFC, they called it, way back in 2013.
Wow, 2013. So this isn't entirely new. What's driving that shift?
Well, what's really interesting is how our priorities as consumers have kind of evolved. It's not just about getting the thing anymore.
Right.
There's this growing desire for purchases that actually feel right, that align with your personal ethics, your lifestyle. People want to shop without that nagging feeling afterwards.
Yeah, makes total sense. You don't want to feel like you compromise something just to buy something.
Exactly.
And the article seems to argue pretty strongly that dealing with this guilt isn't just, the nice thing for businesses to do. It actually hits their bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. It's a solid business case. When companies proactively tackle this consumer guilt, they often see real results. Better conversion rates, happier customers.
Happier customers will probably come back, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you feel good emotionally about a brand, its values, its products, you're much more likely to buy and then become loyal later on. It builds a stronger, more resilient brand, too.
Okay, got it. So we know what it is and why it matters. Let's dig into the psychology a bit. What's actually happening in our brains to cause this guilt?
A key driver the article mentions is cognitive dissonance.
Ah, okay. Heard of that.
Yeah, it's that mental discomfort, that friction you feel when your actions don't match up with your beliefs. So maybe you really care about sustainability,
Uh-huh.
but you find yourself buying from brands known for, well, not being so green. That inconsistency creates this internal conflict, and that can pop up as guilt.
So that mental clash, what I do versus what I believe.
Precisely. And it's not just about those big ethical things either. Our desire to see ourselves in a positive light, maintain a good self-image, that plays a role too.
How so?
Well, if you make an impulse buy that totally blows your budget or maybe goes against your goal to live more simply, that can trigger guilt too.
Right, because it conflicts with the ideal you.
Exactly. And the article actually breaks down guilt into different types, which is pretty helpful for understanding the nuances.
Yeah, I saw that. Financial guilt, ethical guilt, health guilt was in there too.
Yep. Health guilt, social responsibility guilt, and even moral guilt.
That covers a lot of ground.
It does. And what's important is that the trigger can be really personal, really specific to the situation. Financial guilt might just be about spending more than you planned.
Whereas ethical guilt could be about, like, how the workers were treated.
Exactly. Or the environmental impact. Health guilt is obvious. Buying stuff we know isn't great for us. Social responsibility guilt might kick in if you feel you're not doing enough for your community, maybe. And moral guilt ties back to your personal or religious standards.
And this guilt doesn't just hit you afterwards, does it? The article talked about temporal dimensions. What's that about?
Yeah, that just means guilt can show up at different times in the whole buying process. It's not just one moment. There's anticipatory guilt. That's the anxiety you might feel before you even buy. That's often what leads to clicking away from the cart.
Right, the pre-purchase jitters.
Then there's preceding guilt. That's the discomfort right when you're about to pay. Might make you cancel at the last second.
Oof, yeah.
And finally, reactive guilt. That's the classic buyer's remorse after the purchase. That's often what leads to returns.
So it can hit you before, during, or after. Knowing that must be really useful for businesses trying to smooth things over.
Definitely. It shows them where the potential friction points are.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this guilt actually, show up? What do we do as shoppers when we feel it? What are the signs?
Well, the article lists a few behaviors. The most obvious one is cart abandonment. You fill it up then.
Yeah.
Nope.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
I think we all are. Another sign is prolonged browsing. Spending ages comparing tiny details, reading every single review.
Try to talk yourself into it.
Exactly. Trying to justify it, ease that potential guilt. Delay tactics, too, like hitting save for later instead of buying, that can signal that internal struggle.
Putting it off.
Yeah. And even after you buy, sometimes people engage in post-purchase rationalization, constantly telling themselves or others why it was actually a great purchase. That can be a clue they're feeling a bit uneasy underneath.
Interesting. Almost like defending the purchase to themselves.
Kinda, yeah.
Mm.
The article also highlights which kinds of products are most likely to trigger guilt.
High-end luxury stuff, I'd imagine. The price tag alone.
For sure, financial guilt is big there, but also those indulgent items or things we know might be harmful. Think single-use plastics or maybe fast fashion.
Right, the ethical or environmental angle.
Definitely. Even, like we said, junk food can bring on health guilt. Basically, anything with a significant financial, ethical, health, or social implication can crank up the guilt potential.
And it probably affects different people differently too, right? Like maybe based on age or culture.
Oh, absolutely. The article mentions Gen Z, for example. They tend to have really strong ethical viewpoints.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
So they might feel guilt more quickly if a brand seems dodgy. And culture plays a big role, too. Some cultures place a huge emphasis on community, so social responsibility guilt might be more common there. Understanding these differences is key for businesses.
Okay, so we've got a pretty clear picture now of what guilt is, why it happens, and how it manifests. Now, the big question, what can businesses actually do about it? How do they create these guilt-free experiences?
Right. This is where we get into the strategies. The article lays out a few key approaches. One big one is transparency and information.
So just being open.
Yeah, really open, like about your supply chain. Where do materials come from? How are workers treated? Sharing that can seriously reduce ethical worries.
Yep.
Also, explaining your pricing clearly, especially if part of that price covers fair wages or sustainable materials. That builds trust.
And giving people information like educational content.
Exactly. Content about where the product comes from, its environmental footprint, that can tackle potential guilt triggers head on. It's about empowering people with knowledge.
Knowledge to feel good about the purchase. I like that. What else?
Another approach is value reframing.
Reframing. How does that work?
Instead of just focusing on the cost, you shift the focus. Highlight the quality, the durability, the personal benefits. Frame it as an investment, not just an expense.
Like buy quality. Cry once.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Emphasizing how long a product will last rather than it being disposable helps justify the cost by showing long-term value and less waste.
Okay.
And you can also highlight the emotional benefits, how it reduces stress, brings joy, or maybe supports a cause the customer cares about. That shifts the focus away from potential guilt triggers.
That makes sense. Frame it positively, give it more meaning. Are there other main strategies?
Yep. Ethical positioning is huge. This means getting recognized certifications like fair trade or cruelty-free and making sure customers see them.
Those little badges you see on websites.
Exactly. And sharing real stories about your positive impact, how you support communities or cut your carbon footprint. That makes people feel their purchase is part of something bigger, something good.
So they feel like they're contributing.
Right. And finally, there are purchase justification frameworks. Sometimes people just need a little nudge, a bit of reassurance that it's okay to treat themselves or that they are making a responsible choice.
Like giving permission.
In a way, yeah. Marketing can subtly reinforce that I deserve this feeling, or position products as earned rewards, or as ethical alternatives to maybe less great options.
Okay, so those are the big picture strategies. How do businesses actually use these, like day to day, throughout the customer's journey?
Good question. The article breaks it down into tactics for before, during, and after the purchase.
So pre-purchase, what happens then?
Well, you can use informative landing pages, really detailed stuff about your ethics, cost breakdowns, the positive impact. Social proof is powerful here too. Testimonials from happy customers who felt good buying from you.
Seeing other people felt okay about it.
Exactly. Value comparison tools can help too, showing long-term savings or environmental benefits. And even things like pop-ups that address common worries, shipping costs, return policies can reduce that anticipatory guilt.
Ah, so those aren't just annoying, they can actually be helpful.
They can be, if done right. Then, at the point of purchase, the checkout needs to be super smooth, really easy.
Reduce the friction.
Right. Clearly stating policies on refunds, returns, maybe carbon offsets that eases anxiety. Offering little extras like micro-donations to charity or eco-friendly upgrades gives customers a feeling of positive action.
Like adding $1 for a cause.
Yeah. And showing the impact instantly can be great. Like real-time stats. Your order saved X amount of water or donated Y amount. That really reinforces the good feeling.
That immediate feedback sounds really effective. Okay, what about after they've bought it? The guilt can still creep in then.
For sure. So post-purchase, it's all about reinforcing their positive choice. Personalized thank you emails that maybe mention the impact again.
Nice touch.
Inviting them into a community aligned with your brand's mission can build belonging. And providing ongoing value tips for using the product, care instructions, updates on your charitable work, keeps that positive connection alive.
So it's about extending that good feeling, building the relationship beyond just the transaction.
Exactly. It's long-term thinking.
Now, so much shopping is online. How does the actual website design, the user experience, fit into creating this guilt-free feeling?
Oh, digital design is absolutely critical. Things like displaying ethical badges and cues those logos, certifications prominently on your site and app, that builds trust right away.
Visual reassurance.
Yeah. And just having a clean, trustworthy layout. Easy navigation, clear calls to action. It reduces uncertainty, makes people feel more secure.
Yeah.
Using progress indicators during checkout can also help showing them they're moving smoothly towards a positive outcome.
Little things that make the online space feel safer and more aligned with what they value.
Precisely. And your content strategy ties into this heavily, telling stories that resonate with ethical or eco-conscious shoppers, using facts, figures, but also real human stories.
Not just dry scats.
Right. Featuring testimonials where people specifically say they overcame guilt and felt satisfied. That's gold, but it needs to be balanced. Empowering information, not, manipulative hype.
Authenticity matters.
Hugely. Then optimizing the cart and checkout. Maybe using abandonment triggers not just to sell, but to offer support or clarify concerns. A simple one-page checkout can reduce the mental load, less chance for second thoughts.
Makes it easier to complete.
Yeah. And right before they pay, maybe a quick summary of the benefits, the ethical points again, just reinforcing the value one last time.
So you're constantly addressing potential friction and highlighting the positives through design and content. The article mentioned some industry examples too.
It did. In retail and e-commerce, for instance, there's a big focus now on sustainable packaging, being transparent about worker welfare. You'll see more details on product pages about where stuff comes from, how it's made.
Like that retail-minded piece mentioned.
Exactly. In food and beverage, it's often about highlighting natural ingredients, clear nutrition facts, ethical sourcing. That study on sugar-free tea packaging showed how honesty really boosted trust and repeat buys.
Being upfront about what's inside.
Yeah. For luxury goods, where price is a factor, the focus shifts. They stress craftsmanship, longevity, thinking of it as an heirloom piece, an investment.
Less disposable, more permanent.
Right. And some highlight social contributions, maybe partnerships with artisans. Even financial services are getting in on this. More clarity on terms, returns, social responsibility. Sometimes framing services as a form of self-care and investment in your future well-being.
Interesting how they all adapt the core idea to their specific context and potential guilt triggers.
Yeah.
So how do businesses know if any of this is actually, working? How do they measure it?
Good question. The article points to standard KPIs, key performance indicators. You watch your conversion rates. Are more people buying after you implement these strategies?
Makes sense.
Look at cart abandonment rates. Are they going down? That's a strong sign you're reducing that hesitation. You might also see average order value, AOV, go up if people feel more confident.
And long-term.
Long term, you look at repeat purchases and customer loyalty. Are people sticking with you? That's the ultimate sign you're building those positive, guilt-free relationships.
So tracking the core metrics, what about testing different approaches?
A/B testing is perfect for this. Test versions of pages or checkouts. Does featuring ethical badges make a difference? Does offering micro-donations help? See what the data says.
Comparing different messages.
Exactly. And qualitative stuff, too. User labs, focus groups, actually talking to people to understand their emotional reactions. Plus, constantly analyzing feedback from surveys, reviews. It's essential.
So it's not a one-time fix, it's continuous improvement. Okay, looking ahead, what's next for guilt-free purchasing? Any cool trends coming?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Technology will likely play a bigger part. Think AI personalization, maybe identifying your specific guilt triggers and tailoring the experience.
Oh, really?
Potentially. Blockchain could offer even more robust supply chain transparency, making it easier to verify claims. And imagine using augmented reality to see the environmental impact of your purchase before you even buy it.
Wow, that's pretty futuristic. What about us, the consumers? How are our expectations changing?
They're definitely rising, especially younger generations. They're demanding more accountability, more proof from brands. What used to be a nice to have, these guilt-free options, is becoming more of a basic expectation.
The bar's getting higher.
It is. And we'll likely see shifts in what triggers guilt across different cultures, maybe focusing more on water usage or local labor practices, things like that.
And regulations. Will governments or industries step in more?
Seems likely. We might see stricter laws around labeling for sustainability or social impact. Industry groups might tighten their own rules. Certifications could become mandatory in some areas. As guilt-free becomes more mainstream, expect more scrutiny on whether the claims are actually true.
So more pressure for genuine transparency and impact. It really sounds like this whole area is just going to become more and more important. Okay, as we wrap up, what are the absolute key takeaways, the core principles for businesses trying to do this right?
I'd say it boils down to a few things. Authenticity is number one. Genuine effort always beats superficial marketing. Provide balanced information, be transparent, but also offer reassurance. Deliver real value, both for the customer and, ideally, for the world. And focus on building long-term relationships based on trust.
Authenticity, balanced info, real value, relationships.
Got it. And if a business wants to start down this path, what's a general roadmap?
First, really understand your audience's guilt triggers. What worries them specifically? Then prioritize. Focus on the changes that will have the biggest impact on reducing those key emotional barriers. It's often best to phase changes in, start with easier things like better info, then maybe tackle bigger stuff like supply chain transparency later. And crucially, measure everything and keep adjusting. Use data, listen to feedback, learn and refine. Assess, prioritize, phase it in, measure, and adapt. Sounds like a solid plan. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. It's fascinating how much these emotional currents influence our online buying.
It really is. And understanding it helps everyone, I think. Businesses can build better relationships, and you, as a consumer, can make choices you feel genuinely good about. It leads to a more positive e-commerce world overall.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, this deep dive into e-commerce psychology was powered by Growth Suite. If you want help running smart discount campaigns on your Shopify store, check them out.
Definitely was a look.
You can test Great Suite for free. Just find it on the Shopify App Store. Thanks for tuning in.